Hello and welcome. I am the Restless Kaiser.
I am Alan.
I'm Johnny B.
I'm Andy Hobday.
But together we are
Modelling for Advantage.
Thereabouts.
I'm sure that worked marvelously. Right, who have we got as early adopters in the chat? Rich John says hi all with a salute emote. Axe and Axe is going to watch the rerun. Rosie Raccoon, Johnny's better half. Rosie did a fantastic job for us at the salute. She got herself a chair in a corner and said, I'll stay here with the luggage. And we were carting loads of equipment around, so it was great. Yeah, I was delighted. Saffron69 is here. Nick from Team Clueless Games. Tony Halton. What's that? Rosie building ECW Cavalry. That seems unlikely to me. Is Rosie taking up English Civil War, John?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah. Who else? Friends of General Haig. Andy is here. They had a beautiful display board at Salute. Andy is going to come on in 2 weeks' time. I'm going to talk to us about that for those of you that were interested. And that's that kind of, I can't remember, was it like Lithuanian Commonwealth stuff he was doing, which was he's been working on for a long time.
Knowing Andy, an obscure period of time.
It'll be something Pike, push of Pike, I'm sure. Rich and Josh Wood is here. Hobby-wise, I've been a bit ill this week, so I'm not going to try and push it. If I get a little bit sweaty later, it's not because I'm that excited to be around Andy. Well, it could be, but it's because I'm also a little bit on the ill side. But I'm practically in my pajamas here, so I think I'll manage.
Bless you. That's grim. Alan is not going to have any hobby because he's in a closet. I'm working on some heavy Spartans on a weird triangular base, which is very strange. For some game,
very Mortal Gods.
Yeah, seems to be. And Mr. Andy, have you got any hobby in front of you? You're going to kind of be talking, I guess.
Yeah, I haven't really. That's really poor, isn't it? I should have had some.
No, it's not, because you're here to tell us about all the wonderful things. And with that in mind, we're going to put you on the big screen. Can you just tell us who you are and what you represent?
I can. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Hobday. I these days write games. So I co-developed Test of Honor, or first version with Graham Davey, who now does Test of Honor as Great for Now Games. I wrote Mortal Gods. I also wrote The Baron's War. And we're now in the process of rewriting Gangs of Rome as a second version. So we're going back to look at that, which we've just done a Kickstarter for. What do? I co-own Futsal Miniatures, and I publish under Warhost Online, which is where you'll find all our ramblings and support for all our games.
Okay, so you're pretty pro at this kind of thing. Kaiser, get us back if you hadn't died from coughing. Bring us all back. He's gone. He's dead.
I'm back. I was doing a bit of coughing there. All right. So, and you mentioned the three principal games there. Test of Honor you co-designed with Graham. Mortal Gods felt like quite a similar sort of game in terms of its mechanics. You had that kind of opposed proprietary dice thing, and that I like that game because if you want a game to be quick, it needs to have a high lethality, and defending was pretty hopeless in that game. In most cases, you want to try not to defend, so I can attack you later in the turn if you have that option. Which was good. It keeps the game moving and stops it dragging out for hours and hours. I think that's really important in the skirmish game. Baron's War I've yet to look at. Is Baron's War a very different game mechanically, or is there similarities?
Yeah, it's very different. As in it's a D10 based game. You've got
D10
different activations. Oh yeah, D10. You got activations in there. You alternate your activations, so you're not drawing like you do for Test of Honor or Mortal Gods. We just take turns to activate. But there's a number of things that you can do. Some units, we call them groups, because it's quite, the period we're doing is not really, they're not really forming up at this point. They're fighting in groups. Most have one activation. If you have a commander in with them or a commander nearby, they can do multiple actions usually because they can be given extra actions to do. So it plays very differently. Again, very lethal, you know, because I like lethal games. But it's I think as a game, and some people will disagree with me, it's quite a simple game to play, but there's a lot of depth to it. So you can the choices you have for building your retinues, the different abilities you can give, how you structure your forces, there's quite a lot of choice, and that obviously adds a bit of complexity. But more higher figure count, you're probably talking 25, 30, up to 50 figures aside. You can start with about what we call a 500-point game, where you've got about 25 figures, but you're playing probably around 750,000. Right. But it's a skirmish game. It is a skirmish game. But we are currently working on rules to make what we would call a large skirmish game, that allows you to move bigger forces using the same rules.
Right.
So it's quite different. If
bigger blocks.
Yeah. If I was, Gangs of Rome is quite a role play skirmish game where you'd have up to 10 figures, and it's quite. If I was putting them into groups, you know, I would say that's our really detailed skirmish game with lots going on. Mortal Gods, kind of Test of Honor. Obviously, Graham's changed it and moved it on, but that Mortal Gods bit is a smaller skirmish. So you're talking 12, 15, 18, 20 models. Baron's War, larger skirmish game if you're using that as a benchmark, really.
Right.
So they're three kind of systems. They're kind of all they're separate, really, but that's kind of what we do.
And so with Baron's War, you mentioned you're talking 20 to 50 figures, and you did mention commanders, but I mean, presumably a 20 to 50 figure skirmish game. This isn't a rank and flank game.
No, absolutely not. It's still a skirmish game. So you'd have I use the title commander as what you would call a leader or all that kind of thing. But they have an ability which is commander, and that allows them to do certain things. So in the game, they have a title commander, but you have one overall commander for your force, and then you can put other commanders within, you know, and it's an ability that they have, really.
Yeah. And on that scale, it's still quite characterful. You can still have your sort of Friar Tuck model or whatever, and they're still impactful in the game.
Yes, absolutely.
Is that right?
Yeah. All the commanders. Yeah, it's based on it's Baron's War, obviously why it's called the Baron's War, and there's some real characters in there. It's around. Funny enough, it is around the time of King John. So the second book supplement, the campaign supplement, is all about Robin Hood and the Merry Men, etc. And we've got the Sheriff of Nottingham. So you could draw in there and take whatever characters you want. But you're talking. Sorry.
I was going to say, will you be making some Walt Disney sculpts of the?
Not yet. I'd have to convince Paul.
Stretch goals, man. Come on.
The sexy fox that everybody likes. Yeah. Maybe you never say never, right? That's what
I mean, because to so many people, right? Like, jokes aside, that is the Robin Hood story, isn't it?
Well, totally.
And they've actually done a really good job of it. I thought.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, that's the one that people think of. Yeah, absolutely.
So in that game, then you are playing some kind of very minor lord or some kind of yeoman captain or something. Then are you? Is that what these retinues are made up of?
Well, no, because yes, but obviously, I want to play a character called William Marshall. And he's
the Marshal.
He is the Marshal. If you've not heard of William Marshall, I suggest you should go and Google him.
The greatest knight in history.
The greatest living knight. Yeah. He stopped us all speaking French in 1217. He was, he served 5 kings. He was a tournament champion It was like David Beckham of his day. You know, he was so renowned.
Yeah, he's the real deal.
And just an almighty warrior. Yeah. So you have to be able to take him. There's rules for him, but there's also rules to make your own commanders as well. So if there's someone in particular you want to play, you can create him as well. So, you know, I'd encourage you to be narrative, but you don't have to be.
Right. Cool. And a bit like with the Robin Hood thing, presumably you're a little bit fluid around the history and the kind of historical units. Because I mean, if this is kind of before the golden age of the longbow, right? But no one's going to want that.
No, absolutely not. But the Welsh, we've obviously included the longbow in with the Welsh, but it's before Agincourt, of course. So you know, but yeah, we have Robin Hood. You have to have Robin Hood as a character. We've done Maid Marian, we've done Little John, Freytuck. They're all there, you know. But again, you could take William of Cassingham if you wanted to, who they believed was Robin Hood. So he's Willikin of the Weald down right in the Weald, which is modern day Kent, and he fought off Prince Louis, and he did an entire guerrilla action down there, and they believe that he could be Robin Hood, but you know, they think he's made up of lots of different people, so we've included him as well. He's a character too.
What do you mean, like Frankenstein? He's lots of different people all sort of like mulched together, or?
yeah. Well, I think the story's definitely
okay.
It's a Frankenstein story. In my that's my belief. I think he's made up of many different characters. There's like Eustace the monk as well. He was like a French version of Robin Hood, that kind of thing. So all of those.
Okay, so that's Baron's War. Now, if somebody was wanting to get into Baron's War, obviously Footsore, a company that you own or part own, there's an extensive range of quite characterful miniatures there, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's loads.
But as it stands, it's all metal, metal sculpts.
It is all metal at the moment, yeah. And we have some great beginners deals, you know, 500-point deals, which you get the rule book free with, etc. So if you're new to it, it's a good place to jump in. If you're a user of Facebook, like most of us are, there's a Baron's War group on there, which is really friendly with over 6,000 members. You know, there's lots of players, and we're doing a lot of events at the moment as well. It's really taking off. So there's a lot of noise around it at the moment, which is really encouraging. So have a look, and we just released Outremer. So we've gone over the sea. So you know, we've done the Space Marines of historical wargaming. You know, the military knights in all different colours, and we've done the Forces of Islam as well. So they're pretty cool.
Right. So you can do crusading skirmish if you want.
Absolutely, and you can take all of your current Baron's War miniatures over as a crusading force, or you can fight a settled force. You could have a settled force of Franks, or you could, you know, have a different Muslim force, and you can mix them up how they really actually fought side by side. Really
nice. That does sound pretty cool.
I mean, what a lot of people. Sorry, John. Go on.
No, I was just going to say I like the sound of that. That's all.
Because what a lot of people don't understand about the Crusades, they see that kind of iconic clash of iconoclasts, but what they don't see is after the First Crusade, there is a kingdom out there of Christians, and it has its own lords and its own problems, and they fight among each other just as much as European ones do, and they use the local people to do the fighting.
And there's also local Christians as well. So they weren't all Muslim. So, you know, they recruited the local Christians. They married and you know, intermixed. It's where we got the Turcopoles from. So the Turcopoles were Frankish knights, you know, or you know, other Frankish settlers, you know, intermarrying and having sons which would normally be knights, but they couldn't be. So they became like the Turcopoles. So there's a lot of history. I mean, there's 200 years worth of history there, you know, before the Mongols came and ended it all.
I mean, a bit. You never see that as a war gamer. It's like, what stopped the Crusades? And these Mongols arrived, mate. That's really what the problem was.
Well, like you say, everybody thinks it's a religious, big religious contest, and there was elements of that, but it was really actually fighting for land. It was all about land and riches and money, and a lot of when they came over, and sorry if everybody knows this, not teaching anybody to suck eggs, but they came and fought by the will of the Pope, but then they all went home because they had, to the west, because they all had their own land to defend, and the only ones that actually stayed there were people, knights that needed, land of their own, and they wanted to become barons, and they saw the Holy Land as a way to carve out their own niche.
And this is one of the problems you find in later campaigns, is that land isn't there to give away. If we reconquer it, we're to give it back to him.
Yes,
we don't get to keep it. And it's the same if you read about the Norman conquest of Ireland and then the subsequent attempts, innumerate attempts by England. The problem was the appeal of going there is gone if what you're doing is recapturing land for somebody else. It wasn't all going to be there to give away afterwards.
No.
So it's lost a lot of its appeal.
And there wasn't a lot of it. That was
exactly,
the issue, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. So that's Baron's War then, because it's been very big over the last couple of years. It came out kind of 2020-ish, somewhere around then.
2019 was the first set of figures, and then the rules came in 2020. Right. So it's been rocking for a bit, really, and it's just, like I say, it's just building momentum, which is really, really nice. It's really pleasant.
Yeah, sure. It's an interesting period. So let's go on to talk then, if I may, about Gangs of Rome. Gangs of Rome 2. Gangs of Rome 2. So I remember seeing Gangs of War in a kind of pre-COVID salute. So I don't know, was that 2018, 2017, somewhere around then?
2017, I think we did it first. Yeah.
2017. And what I saw was a game which seems to be based upon these kind of mobs, armed gangs that various patricians in Rome would hire to beat each other up and do their dirty work. And very much felt like it's the Gracchi brothers or Marius Sulla, that kind of last days of the empire. It's all got a bit murdery on the streets of Rome. And it's very much about being set on the streets of Rome with the civilian population participating in what's about to happen here. Looking at it visually, it reminded me a bit of that TT Combat game, whatever their Venice one is. It was very much in the city was an important part of it. Visually, I don't necessarily mean gameplay wise. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about Gangs of Rome? Okay. Tell us a little about Gangs of Rome and why Sarissa Precision have come in. So maybe you should start with the scenery.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, I had a haircut. I hadn't had my haircut for a while when I last saw them, so there we go. You've summed it up really well. 2017, it was the first game that we ever did, and it's exactly that. It's gang fighting on the streets of Rome. One of the things that was really important to us was to have that feeling of Rome. So when we initially did version 1, being good friends with Sarissa after Test of Honor, because we incorporated a lot of their Japanese buildings, and they did a lot of Japanese buildings for Test of Honor. I went back to them and said, we're doing this Gangs of Rome game. It would be great to get some Roman buildings. Could you do some? And they said, yeah, of course we can. And come back next week. And I came back the following week, and they'd done 30 buildings. So they'd actually made Rome. Yeah. So I came in. It's like I expected a few, but it was like a whole table full. It was like, wow, this is amazing. So straight away, we had a really good setting to base the game in. And off the back of there, the other part of Rome for me was the mobs. They always say, Rome is the mobs, and the mobs are Rome. So we had to include them in. And when we started playtesting it, the initial version, it felt very empty. So it was a good way to to fill the streets, and then if you haven't played or you haven't seen it, we have these 80, I think about 80 mil bases where you can get 5. Well, there you go. Thank you very much. There we go. Where you can get the mobs in, and they move around the tabletop as interactive scenery. So they will react to what you do or wherever your fighters are going. So if there's a fight or something happens, they will either run away or they'll go and join in, that kind of thing. And by having them there, they can block line of sight at the ground level, etc. But you can also go into them and go and hide in the mob and pop out of a different mob base. So with the scenery, with the mob bases, it gives us that feeling of Rome, and it gives you that thing to play within. And then from there, we just decided that we wanted it to be a kind of different gang kind of game where Roman life doesn't mean a lot in Rome unless you're, one of the noble families. So we made it a very brutal game where if we were all playing, the 4 of us, we wouldn't be, I wouldn't be the leader of my gang on the tabletop. I'm the leader of my gang pulling the strings. So the idea is the scenarios that you're playing is to try and gain power within the Senate, that kind of thing. And you're picking your gang, the best gang that you could pick to actually go and be successful. And with that in mind, that means your gang fighters change quite quickly. So the 2017 version was very... They die, they die. If they live, then that's good, and they come back and you can use them again. But a lot of the cases they die, or you might have a pool of gang members that you draw from based on what scenario you want to do. So they'll have different skills, etc. So your choice of your gang is quite fluid, which makes it quite an interesting game, But what we did find in version 1 was it was a great one-on-one play one-off games. But one of the things that people wanted was a campaign system. So one of the things we've done for number 2 is we've put in a full campaign system in there as well.
Can you become the emperor of Rome?
If that's what well, funny enough, if you want, you can't become the emperor, but you can become quite senior in the Senate. So the idea is to try and get the votes to get higher in the Senate. So if you get enough people voting for you, when you get to the vote round, then you can end your campaign there and leading the Senate, or you can also take that and use that as a leverage. So it depends on how you want to structure your campaign.
That's really cool.
Oh, so you talked about senatorial ranks then. I mean, the historian in me is like, do you mean the cursus honorum? Then, so that it's those ranks.
Yes, it's a top. Yes, absolutely. That's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, it's like I want to be a praetor so I can go and rule Sardinia for a couple of years. Then then I'm gonna have to stab up some guys in Rome.
We're talking about these are the top guys, and they're the guys who you all know are pulling the strings, and you could even equate them to be like. And I'm sorry for any Roman historians, like early kind of mafia families, where they're actually causing that level of crime and trouble, but you can't pin it on them. That's the idea behind it. So this is why you're sending these people out there.
I mean, the whole system was so stinkingly corrupt. That was the problem that they had with Julius Caesar, wasn't it? Caesar was wanted on corruption charges for bribery, but it wasn't that he was bribing people. It was the problem. It's that he was openly bribing people. That was why they hated him.
Well, it was expected. Absolutely, it was expected. Yeah. Bribery is all expected. And we've actually got in the campaign game, there's a round where we can barter and we can trade, but we write down what we're trading. So say I want to buy some equipment from you, and you give me a price, and I write down, I say, here's the price, and you accept it. I might not give you the money. Or I might be giving you half the money or whatever. So from there, a scenario can come out of there where you're trying to get your kit back, or that you've just sold for me for half the price. So it's quite interactive in that way.
That's cool.
Right. This is in the campaign setting then, presumably, rather than you saying...
It is, yes. Yeah. Yes, it's in the campaign.
And that's the big thing that people are going to get from Gangs of Rome too.
Well, no, I think there's a lot more to it. What we've done is we've dived back in and we've kind of rewritten it all. To be fair, the only thing that's really survived is what we talked about earlier, which is the opposed dice rolling. So we've kept the stats the same and the points the same. So people who have cards and they played before, it's not a million miles away from what it was. However, the way that the stats work and the way the mechanics work has changed. So one of the things that we found with the original game was we've got this three-dimensional city with lots of stuff to interact with, and people weren't really interacting with it. So we've made it very simple to do that. And the core mechanics, again, I believe are really quite straightforward, but how you decide to play and what you decide to do it when it's your turn is what makes it, again, gives it some depth. So the major changes, we're still drawing. If you play version 1, you still have a pebble in for each of your gang members in the pot, and you draw, and then it's your turn. But we've created what we can't think of a better name, so that probably tells me that the name's okay. You create what we call an action stack, and you can choose up to 4 actions for each of your fights. So I draw a pebble. It's my turn. It's my pebble. Means I can activate one of my gangers who hasn't gone. I can choose up to 4 actions that they can do. And those actions you can fit everything. So you can move, you can climb, you can jump, you can fight. You know, that it's that straightforward. But if you're moving, you move up a ladder or you climb up a wall. If you jump in across a space. So it's a narrative. The action stack is quite narrative. You explain what you're doing. As you can see there, those purple counters are showing 3 actions that you're going to take. So I say to you, Johnny, right, it's my go. I'm going to move my fighter. I'm going to move. I'm going to climb that wall. Your guy's at the top, and then I'm going to stab you, or I'm going to throw you off. So
that's pretty harsh, Andy. Maybe you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, afterwards. But I'm going to say, I don't care, Johnny. Here we go.
Oh,
so I look at I take my fighter who's going to go. I check their agility. Whatever their agility score is, I roll that many dice. And I'm just looking for successes. So if I've got an agility of 7, I roll my 7 dice. I'm looking for 4, 5, 6s. Every 4, 5, 6 is a success. With those 3 actions, to move, climb, stab Johnny's guy, I need 3 successes. If I get 3 successes, I can do it all. And then I take the turn. If I get 2 successes, I can move and climb, and then I'm stuck there. I failed to attack. If I get 1, I can move, and I'm stuck at the bottom. So, you know, you choose your action. It's a risk-reward kind of system, and it plays out. And it sounds very simple, but again, you can do all sorts of things from there.
So, I'm right. I think you declare your actions before you roll the dice.
Yes.
And is there any reason to not declare 7 actions? Other than you may only complete 4 of them.
Maximum.
4 actions. You can declare 4 actions as your maximum. Yes, because if you fail, every one you fail, you get a counter, and we've called it stress. So if I say I declare I'm going to do 3, I make 1, I get 2 stress. For every stress counter I have, I remove dice. So the next time, if I've got 2 stress and I've got an agility 7, I'd only roll 5 dice.
Right.
So it reduces your chance of being successful.
Right.
So early on, I'm absolutely with you. You know, while you've got no stress and you want to go for it, you may as well go for it and see how far you can get. Absolutely, yeah. Only when it gets a bit scary later on and a bit hairy would you have to be careful. You can, but the good thing is you can remove stress by being successful. So if I declare I'm going to do 2 actions, I roll 5 dice, I get my 2, all my stress comes off.
Right.
Man, I like the sound of it.
Right. You don't have to take the chill action.
No, there's no chill action. Yeah. You can always do one action. You can always do 1 action because you should always roll 1 dice. Right. But that's how it works. So it can be really brutal because I could be standing next to your guy and I could say, right, I'm going to do 4 combat actions. just wail into you. Bang, bang, bang,
stab you 4 times.
Yeah. Stab you 4
times. Sounds like a night out in Luton.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, mate.
So you roll and take your successes. But obviously, if you're near the mob can react to it. If I don't cause you any damage, you can hit me back. So there's always a risk and reward. But if you get 4 successes and 4, you cause 4 really high lots of damage in those combat rounds, you can take people out. So it can be quite exciting.
Right. Now, you mentioned about the crowds reacting.
Yeah.
So if you just stab someone on the streets of Rome, everybody turns around to look. But then what happens?
If your mob is within, if any mob base is within 6 inches of any aggro, they roll to react. So you roll a d6, 1 or 2 they flee, 4 or 5 they stop and get out the popcorn, 5 or 6 they join in. So they could actually charge an attack and join into the fight. Oh yeah. It's 1-on-1 and they want to get in on the action. So they can actually cause damage too. And then depending on what your roll is, if you've rolled a 1 or 2 and they're running, you stick the dice on and that affects the roll the next time. If you roll a 5 or 6 and they're aggro, that again affects your dice roll either way for the next time as well. Right.
So they might get they're more and more up for it.
Yeah, more not up for it. So that's how it works. There's also you also have a in the draw there's a counter for the mob. So you put half the number of counters in for the rounded up for the number of mobs. So if you've got 4 mob bases, you put 2 counters in. If you draw one of those out, you can actually willfully activate the mob or move the mob. So you can actually put them where you want them to be, or you could try and get them to attack or do something as well. So all of a sudden they can get really involved.
Right. I mean, it sounds quite involved. So what's the kind of play length for this game then?
You can play a basic game, 4 or 5. We split the book into 3 sections. There's a core rule section, which just obviously takes all the core rules. We've got some pre-generated gangs in there. You can just go on and use and try. 4 or 5 gang members aside, you can play a game in 30, 35 minutes. 45. It's quick. Once you've got the rules, it's quite quick.
The second section months building the scenery, of course.
Oh, of course, yeah. And there's an advanced section, and in there, that where you bring all the extra stuff in. You have different types of gangs. You can fight at night. You can shake the scenery. You can. There's vigile, so the police can turn up if the mobs. Every time the mob reacts, there's a countdown and dice for the police coming to arrest you. So there's lots of other bits and pieces in there as well. But every game that you play is objective driven as well. So you have to try and achieve something as you're playing to win. So
is that what this token is on this building here?
That's an objective token, yeah. So unlike a lot of games where you have to defend the objective in Gangs of Rome, you pick the objective up and you carry it.
Right.
And you don't have to leave the table. We don't want people to leave the table with the objective because obviously you're losing gang members as they do. So even though you have an objective, you put yourself at a disadvantage. So you carry them, and it's the people who have the gang members who have the most tokens at the end is the winner.
Nice.
Cool.
Okay.
Cool.
So now I'm just looking at this, right? Realistically, there is this game. Obviously, is it the sense of feeling, the sense of place? There's a lot of scenery on these boards. That's a lot of time and money, isn't it? To get going.
Yes.
What are you looking at?
Yeah.
Presumably, if you see this as a more sort of sophisticated level of play.
If you would just play, you could. There's rules for fighting outside the city as well, so you could get away with it if you've got a green table with some trees, roads, walls. You could have a Roman villa, and just play on your.
I can go torch Alan's villa. That's the mission.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a mission to go and torch Alan's villa. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
There's a lot. There is a lot of terrain.
Where are the mobs
on here.
Where?
The mobs.
Where are the mobs in the countryside?
You'd have.
They're out there.
What we've done. We've got workers. So in your villa, you'd have guards and you'd have workers. So if he was attacking your villa, Alan, they would be your workers. So they would try and defend it as well. They play a different role within the game.
Slaves,
slaves,
presumably,
absolutely.
a lot of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's rules out, there's mobs on the road. So you've got, if you're coming into the city or you're playing near the walls, you've got obviously all the thoroughfare of people coming through. So there's lots of different ways to do that. But you're right, though. It's not the same as playing in the city. So they do different things.
Yes.
I could set up Johnny's crap market from SPQR and we could fight around that.
Yes. The famous shit market.
Shit market, yeah.
Are they selling shit, or is it because the market's shit?
Who knows?
Nice. So I'm just wondering whether I've got a few more pictures to go through. So just talk amongst yourselves while I find them.
So the Kickstarter is complete, Andy, for Road 2, as we'll call it. When's that all shipping out? When are the backers going to get their grubby mitts on all of that stuff?
Yeah, that's just finished about a month ago. So we've only just opened the Pledge Manager, and that will be open now till about August. There's quite a lot of stuff in there, which is pretty cool. We've included some of the existing things, but we've also included the plastics. So the Kickstarter was to do a new rule book and to include a plastic frame. So that's both been successful.
And that's through War Games Atlantic, is it?
It is through War Games Atlantic, yeah. And the way that the frame has been designed is that you can use it for your gang members, and you can use it for mobs as well. So the basic box comes with 30 figures. Yeah, see up here for thinking. You can, you got 30. Absolutely. So there's enough in there to make, a gang and 4 mob bases, or you could make 2 small gangs and 3 mob bases. So there's plenty to get started in there.
That's really cool. Oh, look! As if by magic.
There you go. So this is 30 multi-part hard plastic figures from War Games Atlantic. So are you shipping the frames from this kit with the starter set? Is that what's happening, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Everything all shipped together. We're talking with War Games Atlantic as well. What this means going forwards. They'd like to obviously include the box set in their range because it would make a great Spartacus Revolt set, or any armored, Roman civilians. You could do a lot with that. There's a lot of crossover there, which is good. But we've done it in partnership with them, and they've been fantastic.
Good.
So these are the models I make. I've got one more picture to show on this front. For some reason, it wouldn't scroll it through it though. So let's just show you the components. So this is if you've done what rookies do, which is chop everything off the sprue the moment you get it right.
Yeah, that's everything that they've made. We can't fit all of that on a single frame. So we're at the stage now where we're just printing all of this out so we can look at them all and just check all the bits and then make a decision of what's going to go on. There's going to be 6. You'll be able to make 6 minis per frame, and there'll be more heads, more arms, etc. But unfortunately, we can't get it all on at the moment. So we are talking about potential of doing another frame later.
And I noticed the gladiator head. Looks like I could have a plastic phallicus, the champion of Rome, which is great news.
Absolutely.
This is from
There's
our
some greaves there somewhere as well. The clip over the top.
Oh yeah, down there. And it's an arm. I thought it was a fish down the bottom left.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Oh, the greaves are separate, so you glue them to a leg.
Yeah.
I mean that's kind of the bit. Sort of the appeal of this. We've been playing Warlords SPQR, which by the way is a terrible game, but we're playing the campaign, and John's Romans with their names like Phallicus, Gladiator of Rome, and Maximus Erectus Longus has really kept our energy levels up for the game. So presumably Viagrix the Druid is now dead. Presumably we could relive that experience with this, but we'd get through a lot of names. Gang members keep dying. That's the problem.
Yeah, that might be an issue.
Is there anything in the campaign system you can do to kind of preserve the one that you really care about? Or
absolutely. There's different. Another thing that we've introduced in the new version is there's gang fighter types. So we've got a brawler, there's a brawler, an acrobat, and a thief. They're the main three. So your brawler, when we were talking about the action stack, if you do a combat action, the brawler always passes their first combat action. Right. And they can re-roll their defense or their attack dice once per round. So they're a bit more stick aroundable, if that's a word. It's not, is it? And then it is now. And then your acrobat, they pass their first agility test if they're climbing or jumping automatically. And again, they can roll dice, etc. So they've got more chance of staying around. There's also you can there's the battlefield medic type of thing where you can bind while you're fighting to try and save yourself. And there's abilities as well. So all of those things, if you want to save someone in particular, you could really save them if you wanted to, I think. And then any that removed, there's an injury table to roll on. Most of them will come back, but they're probably a bit biffed up. So you have to decide if it's worth bringing them back or not.
Oh, right.
Come back with one leg and one broken arm. Yeah. Not the best.
Yeah. Not that best thing, yeah. And then you can also, when you're building your gang for the scenario that you're playing, you can choose one of them to be a leader. You don't have to stick with the same leader all the time. And then your leader gets he can re-roll, or he can encourage people around him or himself to pass any action of your choice within your stack. So again, it's showing their experience, so it kind of stacks it in their favor. So your leader's probably going to hang around as well. So there's ways to do it. There's ways to play.
So gang composition then. You mentioned brawlers. You talked a little about leaders. Presumably, you've mentioned there are pre-generated characters, because I think in the original Gangs of War metal releases, every miniature had a unique set of stats.
Yes.
I didn't play the game, so I didn't notice how unique they were.
Yeah. Every 10,000 cards we created. I wrote a generator, and we just pressed the button and it generated. So it could be their name, it could be their ability, it could be something was different on every card. So the idea was we were trying to make, it was a mad, crazy, stupid idea where we tried to make the populace of Rome, and some people loved it and some people hated it. And I think I underestimated how complete a finisher we all are in the hobby, where if you get into something, you want it all. And I would probably get 1 or 2 emails a week where someone was saying, I want all the cards.
All the cards.
All the cards. I want all the cards. It's like, well, there's 10,000 of them. No, there's not. How can there be?
Right.
So it was a great idea. Some people loved it. Some people really didn't like it.
Those 10,000 cards don't exist as physical copy anywhere, right?
We've gone through about 7,000 out there, I think.
Have you?
So there's 7,000. We shipped about 7,000 cards. So we've got about 3,000 left, I think, and they've all been generated. They're all there as PDFs. So I have a copy of every single one.
You mean if I buy a set of Gangs of Rome, it's got different stat cards into if Alan buys one?
Yes.
That's crazy.
Mad, isn't it? Mad. So the idea was you would go and buy your fighters off the pegs. So I'd have him and her and him, and you get them, you crack them open at home, and then you'd see who you've actually recruited.
Right.
So it seemed a great idea at the time.
So if somebody goes on Kickstarter tonight and makes a pledge to buy is it a box starter set that you're selling there? I should have probably brought that up.
No, it's no. We've done away with that because it was crazy. So if you've invested in version 1, all of your cards that you have, so if you have a stack of cards, all of those characters, all of those cards will be usable in version 2.
Right.
So, and the points values are the same, because that's really important to me. If you've invested in a game and we've changed the game, you should be able to port that game over, or you should still be able to play it as it is if that's what you choose to do. So version 2 will have tables and you can roll and generate. And what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to make the Gang Fighter generator available online. So when the game, when you ship the game and everything, you'll be able to press a button and go, I want a gang of 7 people. Press a button and it will give you 7 people.
Right.
So we'll make that available. So you don't. So you can either roll on the charts, or you can press the button, or you can bring your gang cards in and say, I want those 2 because I really like them. They were my best gang fighters from version 1. I'm going to roll up 3. That's going to give me 5, and then I'll press the button for 2. So it just gives you, so you can build your gang that way.
Yeah. So, and now another thing about this is because these are gangers, these are civilian thugs. There's quite a lot of lady fighters in the range, aren't there?
There is, yeah. We've mixed them in. Obviously, it is bending history a bit, I think, but why not? Because we had civilians and slaves. The idea was that anybody that you meet on the street in Gangs of Rome could stab you.
Could pull out a knife and stab you, yeah.
Could pull out a knife and stab you, yeah. So the idea is when you first meet as your 2 gangs, unless you become known, which they do. We have Rome's Most Wanted as a gang. These different people who've got names become known people. They don't know. You're just a civilian until it all kicks off.
Right. Okay. So, going back to the campaign, and we're going to look at the figures a little bit, talk about the gameplay. Campaign. So, tell me what stops your campaign from snowballing and becoming a disaster, because that's the problem with campaigns.
It's the biggest problem. 2 things. 2 things is the biggest thing I found when I'm playing a campaign is, if you don't turn up every week and everybody else is playing, and then you turn up, they've got super members. Yeah. So what we're doing now is, if we all played and Alan didn't come every week, okay, we would have probably more equipment and access to more fighters. However, you can only take a certain number of points. So I might have more choice, but what we both put on the table is going to be the same points to play the game. Or the scenario may dictate that, Alan's raiding my gang hideout, and he starts with more because he's taking me by surprise and my fighters come later. So the actual campaign play and the actual scenario that you're playing in that campaign should balance what you're playing. When you're successful, you get more resource, more money, more status. However, when it comes to which allows you to do more stuff off the table, but when you're on the table, what you field should be equal to what the scenario is you're playing.
Yeah. The battles you play are balanced.
Yeah, and when you're doing the campaign bit where you're bribing to try and get into the Senate, if you put money down, whatever money you put in, if you're not successful, you're going to lose that as well. So if you're not careful, you could bankrupt yourself quite quickly. Right.
But something I do. Yep.
Yeah, me too. So there's all that kind of, the machinations and stuff can really put a spanner in the works. Or we could gang up, me and Alan could gang up on Johnny, and Johnny wouldn't know because it's Rome,
There's a question from the chat: do characters gain or improve skills? You mentioned they die a lot.
They do die a lot. They will get skills, but it's very limited what they can increase.
Right. Okay.
So
and is it right? Is there like a class skill then? So you mentioned a like a thug type character. There's a series of archetypes.
You pay the points. So if you want you got your 5 fighters to start with, if you want one of them to be a brawler, you can pay 10 points to make them a brawler.
Right.
So how many types you have is limited. Mm-hmm. So you can't make them all brawlers, but you could say up to half of your gang can be those types. So if you've got a gang of 8, you could take 4 brawlers or 4 acrobats or 4 thieves, depending on what you want to do, or 1 of each. But that's the thing, and then you pay the points for them. And the leader isn't a class. You always have a leader, so that's the bit. So if we all were playing, everybody gets a leader. You just decide which of your gang fighters for that game is your leader.
Right. Okay. Right.
So that's the balancing thing.
All right. So the off table, how do you win the campaign? Is you get elected what first consul?
You've got you've got it's two way. Yeah, we make a choice of how we want to play. We could say we're going to play, have an objective. So it could be the first person to be voted into the Senate into that role. So you'd play a number of rounds until you get to that point. And as soon as someone gets elected in, campaign's over. Great, well done. Shake hands if you like that. You know, get really cross about it if you lost. That's what happens. Or you could say it can be open ended. You could just continue to play. And then every time you meet, you bring your gang and you play, you know, because people sometimes don't want to let go. So that whole campaign play where you play among your friends or whatever, because the scenario, the way the scenario works, it balances it. You could just go infinitum.
Right.
That's awesome. Son of, we could keep going. Your main man has a son/daughter. There you go. That's the next set.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. These three guys have become known. They're part of Rome's Most Wanted. So the visual are going to come really early. So you can build a theme and a story around your gang fighters.
Right.
It's how you want to play it.
And the gangs, the stats on the gangs are, although they're different, they're also fairly generic. So, for example, if I wanted to have, I don't know, one of my Greek slaves is one of my gang members, I can just do that.
Yeah, of course.
Just give him a Greek name, or I can have a Numidian guy in my warband if I want to go down that route.
Yeah, we got a guy at the moment playing. He's got a Celt warband.
Right.
He's got a bunch of like Celt runaway slaves who are known on the streets, but they're hiding, and they come out to do the do, and then they hide again.
Right.
So they're known. Cool. So the vigilantes at the moment in our campaign are looking for them. And then we got we made the Oscan players, which are 3 actors, and we've made the figures for them. And what the Oscan players are, they're our latest Rome's Most Wanted. They're actually jobbing actors by day, and because they're not paid enough, at night time they go out and they sell their lethality for money. So 2 of them are really good acrobats, agility, and the little dude who's a dwarf is like a leader, and he's like a real tactical genius. But because they've got the masks on, no one really knows who they are.
That's awesome.
So you can write all sorts of thematic stuff.
Yeah. And so the plastic range is new, which we just looked at. But again, there's a very extensive range. If you want a sort of fat doorman type character, there's a metal model for that.
Yeah.
If you want a brothel keeper, there's a model for that.
There is, absolutely. And there's also other characters which we've called Incola. So even though you've got the mobs, there's these individual characters. There's like a back street healer. So he's on the board, and anybody can try and be healed by him during a game as an action. He kills as many people as he cures. There's a butcher who's out and about who's looking for meat, and he doesn't care what type of meat he takes. So he's your ganger meat. If your ganger gets close, he could get dragged off by him. So there's a retired gladiator in there as well. The Iberian, he's around and he'll help you if he sees gang members ganging up on other members. He'll wade in and help. So it starts to add lots of character. So all of those
obstacles
characters
on the board.
Yeah.
And how do you
obstacles on board? Yeah.
How do you go about choosing which of those? Are they based upon the particular missions, or is that, or are they like, we suggest you have 2 random characters per board or something like that?
Absolutely, or none. So you can decide. Some of the campaign settings you'll dice for it. So there's tables for setting up your campaign game, and you'll say, roll a dice, use 2 or 3 random Incola, 4 or 5 mobs. So you just dice off to generate your scenario. Or in a fixed scenario, it will say use this one. Use the escaped lion, etc. So there's geese as well.
Escaped lion.
The scenarios can be quite specific, but we've made it so you can use them in any of your scenarios that you want to play.
Right. I really like the idea of torching Alan's villa. I feel that's what I would do.
Make it happen. Make it happen.
Just a thought.
Mm.
Having been to Pompeii, there's a very famous mosaic of a guard dog. Would that be an expansion, or do you already have?
Oh, there is a guard
dogs?
dog. Yeah, there is a guard dog. Yeah, as an
There is a
inkler.
guard
So there's two ways you can
already.
use the guard dog. You can either have him running free, so he's out and about on the board, or you can choose which building he's in. So obviously, because you're in Rome, just walking into people's property, there's a chance that they've got a guard dog, or they'll get upset themselves. So there's rules for that as well. So once the dog's out, he's out, and he'll just start munching on people.
Or did you mean the volcano, Alan? Did you mean that as the expansion, or
it's a Pompeii expansion?
The volcano is a bit final, isn't it?
It is a bit, yeah.
There's a lot of expensive
Have to
models on
move
the
down.
table. I hate to see them burn.
Move down the board as the flames come. Yeah.
Oh, well, it sounds very nice so
good.
far.
Sounds good. Yeah, I've got to say it's the scenery. I'm looking, but because everything we do is on YouTube, it's got to look visually right. And I'm looking at those boards thinking that's a sort of 6 to 9 month commitment to get that to the table.
It's really important to me. It's one for me. I'm a very narrative player, and I like really nice scenery and interactive scenery. So it's very key. But also, when going back to what we were saying earlier, when we went back and we looked at Gangs of Rome 2, we wanted everybody to be up, over, round, and make it very easy to traverse the scenery. And so it's like, oh, do I have to roll a dice to do that? Or that, as long as I can say to you, I'm going to run up that ladder or climb over this thing, or I'm going to jump on the roof, I'm going to jump over. As long as you can say what you're going to do, you can do it. It just depends on if you're successful at doing it. So all that scenery is really used. And again, in the advanced rules, you can be walking over some of the flooring, and the flooring might give way. So it really adds to the
partially
game.
constructed buildings.
Yeah, you can fall through to the bottom. Yeah.
I mean, if you believe Augustus, Rome was a dump anyway. He said, well, I found it in brick and left it in marble. Rome wasn't nice to look at until after the Divine Augustus.
Well, that's why we've got all this stuff under construction, because if they weren't happy with an area, they'd just set fire to it and pull it down and build it again.
Like Alan's Villa.
Hey! So, as we're coming very close to the end now, I just wanted to briefly bring up the subject of Mortal Gods. We played, I don't know, 3-4 games, Mortal Gods, way back. Enjoyed it. And COVID happened, and lots of other things happened. Back then, you'd done a few kind of streams where you chatted about developing other Mediterranean factions being available within it, for what my particular favorite being Carthaginians. I've been kind of waiting for those cards to come out. I want chariots, and I want elephants, and I want cavalry. And I think in the game there might already be an elephant. I'm not sure, and our cavalryman.
Yes, There's the Thracians have all the cavalry that you need. We've done Greek cards for cavalry, so it's all there. To answer your question properly, what we did was we kind of hamstrung ourselves. I love cards. I think cards are great, and I think they make a game really good. Problem is, printing cards and creating cards for all of the things that we want to do is a very difficult, laborious process.
Right.
If for Carthaginians, we could do Carthaginians on one side of A4 for Mortal Gods. You could get all the types in there. If we were going to do Celts, early Celts, which we want to do, we could have them in there. Early Romans, that kind of stuff. And we just missed the trick. We made it really difficult for ourselves to support our own game. So what we're going to do is, we've got a lot of these lists written. We just either haven't got the finance to have all the art done, or have all the cards laid out, etc., that we wanted. So we pressed stop on what we were doing, and we've just been looking at a better way to be able to support Mortal Gods. So after Gangs of Rome, that's what we're going to do. We're going to go back and look at Mortal Gods, and we're going to release it in a way that makes it a lot simpler to get into, and it lets people play all the different forces of the period that they want to do. So that's the plan. And again, talking about computer generated, I in my head at the moment, I'd like to be able to put all of these forces online, have a program that generates the cards. You press a button and it prints out your cards for you onto sheets.
Right.
And then you just print them off black and white, and there you go. And if you wanted to go and then have them professionally printed, you could just go and take the files and have it done. I think we've just made it very difficult for a game.
Because of the cost of, you have to print thousands of cards and sell them.
Yeah, printing thousands of cards to sell them, but also to lay the cards out. It's not a simple process, you know. It's quite an intensive process. And when we did initially, we did Test of Honor. It was quite straightforward to start with because it was samurai versus samurai, Ashigaru versus Ashigaru. You know, it was pretty straightforward. I think what Graham's done with it now is really cool, where he's brought all the different sets in, but they're quite tight. You know, it's like maybe 8 or 10 cards. If we were going to do Carthaginians, you need 30, 40 cards. You know, so I
can't remember whether having an individual copy of the card was important.
It's not really, but people want it. You know, so if I have 3 elephants, I want 3 elephant cards. If you know, that's what.
I think you put the order markers on it rather than on the table.
Yeah,
it did have a
some
use.
people like to do it. Yeah. So, but then we could just do it on a sheet, couldn't we? So it doesn't detract from the game. So we're kind of like just going around again and having another look at it, because I think the game is really good. It's the right size. I just think, like you, it needs additions now. You know, there's loads of different, loads of groups.
The point was like, if we play this again, we're kind of playing the same game, or we've got to build units for armies. So I built some Carthaginian sacred band spearmen, and I built some Numidian javelin men, you know, and I'm like, okay, but these other unit types don't exist in my army. I can't really.
Absolutely.
You know, so where do I go with that? And you never put Romans in, which, you know, again surprised me.
Yeah.
So,
funny enough, we've done Republican Romans. We've got all them done and all the cards made. Right.
But you haven't got around to printing them. So people that enjoyed Mortal Gods, they've been waiting for some development there. You think once this is out of the way, I don't want to.
Oh, it's my next.
It's the next thing.
It's my next big. It's my next big project for futsal.
And is that going to be? You think Mortal Gods 2, and things might look a little bit different?
I think we won't change the game much, because I think the game plays really well. I think what we will do is we'll find, again, you know, if you've got all the cards at the moment, then you'll be lucky, because, you know, you'll still be able to use them all. It'll all be the same. I think we'll just find a better way of bringing the armies to the table, because I think people want variety.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Well, we are only a couple of minutes over. So hobby-wise, I didn't cough myself to death tonight, which was great.
Well done. Good for you.
I was judicious use of the mute button. Alan, did you get any hobby done?
He didn't have any hobby to get done.
I didn't have any hobby.
But we can ask Alan, out of those ones that were mentioned, Rome, Mortal Gods, and Baron's War, out of those 3, I'm sure there was mostly one more. Which one takes your fancy, Alan? If any?
Probably the Baron's War, because I really don't know very much about the game, the setup of ancient Rome. But certainly the Baron's War sounded more interesting, because you've got the potential to go off and do the Crusades. You can even head off to the Baltic and fight heathens.
Yes. Heathens everywhere.
All right, let's have a look at.
Well, sort of. Not non-Adriatic.
Adriatic. I've put gold on the dudes. Not that you can see because it's superiorly overlit, but yeah, Spartans are coming, mate. Spartans are coming.
John, I'm impressed if you use the actual, like, legit heads for those rather than the 300 Spartan heads.
Yeah. They've got legit heads. Although one
They
of
all
them's
got
got like a face mask sort of thing going on. It's not his face. It's like some sort of weird thing going on.
Oh, right.
I don't know. So it's all gold.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
So I think a lot of people weren't happy with those, you know, these are the authentic heads. I want the guys from the 300, right?
Well, yeah, I would prefer diapered,
Spartans have beards because
oily
they're
men.
men.
Isn't
Oh,
that a bit more homoerotic? Or
yeah,
If you're
I'm
not,
down with that.
if you're playing ancient Greek hoplites and you're trying to cut out the homoerotic, you're kind of missing the point, I think. Sacred band all the way. So, Andy, was it oily Greek men that attracted you to write Morgoth?
Absolutely, every time.
Every time. How else do you prepare for battle than oiling your fellow man?
I mean, exactly. And on that note,
if you had been doing any hobby, Andy, what would it have been?
I'd probably be painting up some Anglo-Danes at the moment.
Anglo-Danes. Now, does that mean that there's something else in the pipe work? As my final question.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's already a supplement for Baron's War, which covers Vikings, Danes, Saxons, Welsh, etc. So we've done that bit. I mean, Footsore Miniatures is a Dark Age company. We don't have a Dark Age system, which is just crackers. So
right, there are loads of models, but
loads of models and no rules. So about 12 months ago, we did a supplement for Baron's War, but it's available online now. So we're playing that at the moment. I think we've Benedict wrote a chunk of the Outremer stuff. I think we've identified about 22 factions we'd like to do for the Dark Ages for the Baron's War. So and it's variants, you know, some of those are variants, but I think we'll be doing that at some point next year.
It's good.
And does Baron's War have a campaign system in it?
It does, yeah. It's in the Death and Taxes book.
Right, there you go. So, and you can do that with your Vikings. I can bring my Huskarls and my Berserks and raid.
You could adapt. Yes, you could adapt the Death and Taxes campaign system for it easily. Yeah.
Sweet, something to look forward to. All right, guys. Thanks everybody for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.